Aenig by Cáel. Chapter 4. Dylan watched Indy go, with the hopes that she would indeed find her place among the blacksmiths. She seemed like a nice girl, young, which was good. They could use some new blood, for lack of a better phrase. Cáel, you can let me go now, he said softly, so he didn't draw the other tech's attentions. You've made your point. He tried to inconspicuously pull himself from his friend's grasp, but the arms didn't give. They never did. The scout would let go when he wanted to, not a moment before. Dylan heard him hum questioningly. Oh, he was waiting for an answer to an unspoken question. Yes, this is all incredibly embarrassing. Are you happy now? The scout laughed quietly, all the while glaring at the other techs over the top of his friend's head. A quick jerk of his own, and the lab rats scattered, as though on a sinking ship. You know as well as I do, he hummed, once they were alone, that there is more than one way to activate adrenaline. Stop it. You're being a jerk, Dylan mumbled unhappily. Come now, lab rat. I barely ever get to see you anymore. I miss you. Dylan huffed irritably. He wasn't going to enjoy this talk. You told me you weren't interested, remember? So stop trying to butter me up, because I know you want something, so out with it. I'm bored, the man whined. And there it was. Funny how those two little words terrified the tech more than the outbreak itself. Please tell me you have another mission. Something deep in Memph territory. I want to kill something. Not yet. The tech shook his head apologetically, even as the man's fingers wrapped around his wrist to bring his bleeding fingertips up for inspection. The foragers are going out in the morning, he offered, in an attempt to ignore the butterfly stirring in his belly. Go with them. Boring. Cáel knew that Dylan knew the foragers didn't like him. Not that many of the civilians did, though the feeling was mostly mutual on his part. I want to spill blood again, he hummed, pressing into the boy's fingers to make the pinpricks well more. It's been too long, and this evening was invigorating. He brought the boy's fingers up to his mouth to lick curiously at the wounds, and Dylan wondered why he was still crushing on the clearly disturbed scout. It had been months since he'd thought about it, but every time Cáel did something like this, his heart would still flutter, and he'd curse himself from high heaven. Where's the most activity lately? Cáel asked, already loosening his grip so he could, no doubt, stride over to the monitors. Dylan instantly turned in the circle of his arms, stopping the man dead, and glared. No peeking. You're a bitch, Cáel grumbled. And you're an asshole. But it's better that we stick to our jobs. I tell you where to go, and then you go. The man grinned in surprise, and his hand splayed wider over the boy's back. Oh, look who suddenly grew a pair. That shouldn't have made Dylan blush, but it did, and the smile that split Cáel's face was blinding. How could this man be so... and yet so connivingly... Oh, he was about to get a compromise that leaned in his favor, and he knew it. Dylan swallowed down nerves and shifted his hands up to the scout's shoulders. Maybe he could get something out of it too, if he played his cards right. Since you bought me such a nice present, Dylan hummed, vaguely gesturing in the direction he had left, because that was exactly what the scout thought her to be. I could let something into the maze for you. There's enough activity in the area for maybe 2 or 3 to stumble in. You always have the best ideas, Dill. Cáel practically purred, pulling the boy closer and leaning down slowly. I thought I had the best ideas, Damien's deep voice contested. The two glanced up to find the third of their trio giving them a not-so-pleased glare. Ah, one of the nerds had tattled on him. Cáel wondered who it had been. Dylan sighed. His brother could be a little overprotective sometimes. Despite Cáel's obvious lack of social skills, he wouldn't hurt either of them. They were the firsts. They would always have each other's backs. The man continued to glare accusingly regardless. Like my idea that you don't hang around areas where you have no use, Cáel. Hello, brother, the youngest offered, when he felt Cáel's arms tighten around him, and he vainly hoped the man wouldn't bait his sibling. I was just asking Dylan for a favor, Cáel grinned deviously. No such luck, then. The tech sighed and held his brother's gaze to calm him, keep him focused. One of the survivors from today was a girl with some skill, he said slowly. Cáel introduced us. I think she'll make a good blacksmith. She seems eager to learn and already knows the basics. My guess is that she was educated before the outbreak. Damien wasn't fooled, but he nodded. The girl had seemed like the greatest asset to her family. He'd since learned that Ukwa was a hunting man, and he'd taught his family to handle guns since they were old enough to walk. They would be useful, but if the girl wanted to be a blacksmith, he was sure his brother could use the extra pair of hands. And what about you? He asked, suspicious gaze still narrowed on Cáel. My face still hurts, the man mumbled, and buried his head into Dylan's shoulder for protection. You deserved it, Damien grumbled, folding his arms over his chest. You two were fighting again, Dylan scolded both of them. He acted selfishly outside. The bigger man grumbled out an excuse. It amazed him how his little brother sometimes made him feel like such a toddler. I know, Dylan deadpanned. You forget that I can still hear everything that goes on out there. You didn't have to hit him in the face. And you didn't have to provoke him, he added to chide Cáel, before Damien could get defensive. Honestly, these scouts and their bloody pisting contests. Why he always seemed to end up in the middle was beyond him. Anyway, Cáel's antsy, and that's not good for anyone. It was a joke to Cáel and a warning for Damien. I'm going to open up the maze. Do you want to send out an invite? It's a bit late for that, don't you think? Damien advised more than asked, his back still rigid and eyes glued to Cáel. It's almost time for dinner. I'll be quick, I promise. Please? Cáel pleaded, puppy eyes on full display, and Dylan actually had to laugh as the resident bad boy tried to be cute with the one and only person who wasn't scared to call him out on his nonsense. How about you skip the maze tonight and go out with the foragers in the morning, Damien suggested, quickly continuing before Cáel could begin whining. They're going into an uncharted area, he offered up as a bribe he knew full well would have his unruly friend thirsty for it, even if it was a lie. So you'll be sure to have some fun.